These two know me already, so I'll just introduce myself to you. My name is Peter Schoenfeld. I'm a certified functional range conditioning mobility specialist, Kinstretch instructor, and I also coach level 2 CrossFit. I've been doing sports for a very, very long time. I've had the injuries to show as well, and this is really why I got into Kinstretch and mobility and movement in general, trying to get people to move better. Because of our sedentary lifestyles, we get stuck in certain things, right? So this is Kinstretch. It's a movement enhancement system. It is a mobility class, but it's more than a mobility class, because there's a lot of, I think, confusion in the market about what mobility is today. A lot of people think mobility is just being flexible, being able to touch my toes and that kind of thing. But it's more than that. It's really what Kinstretch does. It's a movement enhancement system, right? It is mobility, but we combine mobility with strength training. We say we go into the ranges of motion that people need to move, not what they can move in, but they need to move in, and we build strength there. So what we're essentially doing is normal mobility. We move where we're comfortable. You see a lot of things where people just rotate joints, they stretch a little bit. So what we're trying to do is we're going into new ranges that you've not explored before, and then we're working there to make those ranges stronger. We will get flexible in the process because we do stretch a lot, and we stretch for long periods of time. One of the very important things to remember is there's also a lot of debate on what's the right time to stretch. A lot of people think 15 seconds is enough. A lot of people think 1 minute's enough, but it's actually a lot more. So we stretch for more than 2 minutes at a time. Because at the end of the day, it is not our muscles that we're stretching that control our flexibility, it's our nervous system. So we need to stretch for a long time in a calm environment to help our nervous system understand what it is we're trying to do. All right, so flexibility, these flies. And then finally, as I said, we are working to build usable ranges of motion, right? If I look at everyday life, I do everything I do in the frontal plane. I work here, but we very rarely work here, right? And that's the areas where we don't go very often, right? Whether it's my hip, whether it's my arm, whether it's my neck, that's the areas we need to go into. We need to be strong there. Now, people say, well, why do I need it? Example, if I'm walking on a wet floor and I slip and suddenly I need to instinctively reach and I don't have strength there, I will get an injury, right? So it's preparing us for life, but it's also preparing us for positions that we need in sport, right? So the principles of functional range conditioning and Kinstretch is we look at rotation first for every joint before linear movement, except for the spine. The spine we do linear first and then we do rotation. So what we will do throughout the session is we go through two main components. The one component is controlled articular rotations, CARs. We take every single joint through its full available range of motion. If your range of motion is limited, CARs are there for two things: as a diagnostic tool to help me understand how my joints move, and then over time to improve how that joint moves. And that's a maintenance tool. It's like brushing your teeth, right? We don't have to, but we know if we don't, it'll probably rot eventually. And the same thing happens with your joints. If you don't move through a full range of motion, eventually that range goes away. So that's something, at a minimum, if you take anything away from this class today, is joint rotation every single day. While you're brushing your teeth, roll your ankles. While you're making coffee, move your shoulders, that kind of stuff. And then we go into the strength training part. So we go into what we call end ranges, because everybody is usually comfortable just operating in the areas we're comfortable in, that we need every day. We're going to get into positions that might be uncomfortable, and then we'll do strength isometric training there, right? Then the last thing I want to mention is pain, right? Because this is not going to be just a stretching class and very comfortable. You are going to be in areas where it's going to be uncomfortable. We might train certain things where you feel you get cramps. That is natural, that's normal. Relax that muscle and we go back into the stretch. The one area we need to be very, very aware of, which we need to avoid, is closing angle pain. Our joints don't touch. We've got two bones that need to be able to move relative to one another in space, in a joint capsule. If we've not used certain ranges of movement for a while, that space becomes restricted, which means if I bend a joint into a closing angle, I get bone pressing against bone. So that's why a lot of times when people do hip rotations, they say it hurts on the inside. That's the closing angle. This is the opening angle. So if we get any of that pain today, we don't force that pain because it's bone pressing against bone. We need to open up space over time with the work that we do so that that joint can start moving freely again. Okay? Questions?
It's hurts all the time.
It's all the time? Okay, so it can just get better from here, right? Yeah. So we start every class with, as I said, controlled articular rotations. We're not going to go through all of them. I'll show you a few. And then obviously over time, there's thousands of stuff that we can do. Over time, we can go through all of them. And then I'll put you into some positions and then we'll do some strength training there. Right, so we can stand up for the first one. I'll show you one first. And then you can go with me. So we'll do some neck, we'll do some spine, we'll do some shoulder, and we'll do some hip. So again, from the neck's perspective, the neck can flex, the neck can extend, and it can rotate, right? So I need to try and push my neck through its full range of motion. So for a neck car, I start by pressing my chin all the way down, as far down to my chest as I can. From here, I'm gonna slide my chest or my chin along my chest, all the way up to my shoulder, keeping it into full rotation. And from here, I drop it back as far into extension as I can. Rotate all the way around until my chin touches the opposite shoulder. And then I slide it back down my chest, so creating full circle. Right? Nice. Good point. So the goal of all of this is when I move joints, so if I take my shoulder, and I start to do this to get my shoulder, then I'm no longer using my shoulder. I'm using my spine, I'm using my scap. The goal of this is to be able to isolate a joint so that I can move that joint independently, because every joint's supposed to move independently of everything else. Okay, so same thing. So let's go through the cars. Start at your chin, keep everything else nice and solid. We're not moving anything, and we're just gonna go through on the left and on the right. Slow and controlled. It's all about control, not speed, trying to feel the motion. You get to the front, go in reverse. So let's go chin down. So all the way down and then slide. So we're turning almost this way. Sliding it to the side. Yes. Then all the way back as far as you can, over to the other shoulder, and then back down. Just go 2 rotations, one direction, 2 rotations, the other direction. And relax. Okay, so the spine, very similar. The spine one is a little bit harder because here, the main other joint that can compensate is my hips, right? We see a lot of this when we try and move our spine. Our spine have got 3 sections, cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. What we need to try and do is every vertebrae can move independently from one another. And that's what we're trying to do through flexion, through extension, without using my hips, right? So what I usually do on a hip car is I'm gonna ask you to take your block and we're gonna squeeze the block in between our thighs. This just helps me to lock my pelvis and my hips down a little bit to avoid some of the movement, right? And same thing will apply here. I'm gonna start by creating tension in my body, and I'll push my spine into as much flexion as it can. So rounding my spine as much as it can go without my hips going, right? So just to a point where I'm just using the spine. From here, I'm going to turn slow and controlled until I get to a point where I've got lateral flexion. Then I'll go around the back
Keep squeezing, slow and controlled, into maximum extension of the spine. Around until I get to lateral flexion on the other side. And then bring it back forward into flexion. That's 1 rep. And then we go the other way around. So really focus on not moving your hips. Keep everything nice and sturdy. And really think about just rotating through the vertebrae. And squeeze through every rep. Remember, we're fighting for more range of motion. We want to get as much range as we can, even if it's restricted today. I want to keep pushing as far as I can to make my body aware that I'm trying to access more range. Good, right, that's a spinal car. I'm just taking you through some examples, right? We're not going to spend too much time on each of them. I want to get through as much as I can in the time. Now, the shoulder, our glenohumeral joint, is one of 2 ball and socket joints. The hip is another one, shoulder. Everything else is mostly just 2 bones connecting one way or another. So our shoulder can go through a full range of motion from adduction into flexion, into abduction, into extension and back. We need to be able to, like I said earlier, we need to be able to move that joint without contorting my entire body to do so. And for a lot of people, that transition, like I said, from the frontal plane to the back is very hard because we very rarely work here. We always work here. So the shoulder cast starts in front of the body. Right, I'll show you one and then you can do it. So from here, I want to push my shoulder internally towards the midline of my body as far as it can go without any compensation in the scap and the spine until I reach maximum flexion. From here, in order for that to go around, I need to internally rotate that shoulder all the way through and then start pushing it back into extension. Once I'm in extension, I bring it back down to the hip, and then in reverse, I go all the way back into extension, and now I need to externally rotate that shoulder to bring it back into flexion and back down into adduction. Okay? So that's the turning point at the top you need to be aware of, is that rotation of the shoulder, because from here, it's not going to go any further unless that shoulder internally rotates completely to allow it to go back, right? It's not supposed to be a perfect circle. Yours might be here without the compensation, and that's what we're trying to get to, is that ball and socket joint now has a certain limit in the range of motion, and over time, we're going to open up that joint to make sure that it can move a lot smoother. It's just the arm, right? We're trying to rotate the shoulder. We're not trying to move our body to move the shoulder, right? So if you feel that you get stuck here because now my spine wants to help, then turn from there and just go as you can around that circle, right? Slow and controlled. So we start here with the palm facing up. So press all the way up, then press up to the ceiling. Once you get to that position, yes, internally rotate, internally, all the way. Keep this tight, don't move. Keep turning it in. Now in reverse, push that shoulder back, this arm this way first, to the back. In that position you were. So come back this way, so from here. So turn it internally. So now go up into maximum, now you turn it out without moving the spine. Good. So that turn is very important. So right at the top, externally rotate and going back internally. So if I say internally means the shoulder is turning this way. Externally, the shoulder is turning that way. Okay? Just do 2 reps forward and back on each side. Really focus on that compensation. We don't want any of that compensation. That's the goal, is we want to try and get very body aware of how our joint needs to move independently of something else. So palm facing up, yes. So go all the way up into flexion and then start turning it. And while you turn, keep turning it as far as you can. Keep turning. Then stop there. And then from here we go back, up up until maximum extension, then start turning. Yes, yeah, I feel a click there. Yes. So, yeah. So that's typically what happens, right? Is now it's found something that it doesn't like in that range. And over time, that will go away because it's just cartilage pressing. As long as I said, as long as when I turn through this side, I don't feel a pinch on the inside. When we came across, this was the opening side, which is okay. If it's on the closing side, it means something is pressing. Okay. Right, shoulder car. The hip car, let's go down to the hips. The hip is an interesting one, and this is where we'll spend most of our time today. So all of the stuff, the neck, the shoulder, the spine that I've shown you, we've done them standing. I can do them in any position, right? The goal of functional range conditioning is programming my body and my nervous system that I can move in any position. So I could now even sit in the butterfly and I can do that same shoulder car. I can do the same neck car. I can do the spinal car. There's a lot of different positions. It makes it harder this way, yeah? Now, even we can go into a bodyweight squat and then we do shoulder cars from there, right? That's a little bit later on, but you get my point. So now we've got a whole other bunch of joints working together to get that joint to move. Right, so for the hips, we're gonna go into a side lying position, so you can use a little pillow. I'll show you this one first. So we wanna create tension in the body. This leg, doesn't matter where that goes, this is the leg that we're gonna focus on, right? I'll actually move this one out the way because I wanna slide this leg. So I'm gonna create tension in my body, and from here, having this leg slightly externally rotated, again, the hip, if I look at the hip here, it externally rotates in the socket. So I'll start from here, externally rotate it, pulling it up into flexion of the hip. From flexion, I'm going to abduct. And again here, what I don't want to happen is this. I only want to move the joint. So the hip will go into abduction. From here, around the joint, I want to internally rotate the hip. Keep pushing that internal rotation. I'm a little too close to the wall. And back down, while this is internally rotated. In reverse, I'm gonna keep that internal rotation until I get to a point where I can feel it sticks. Then I'll bring in external rotation, back into flexion, and down. So that takes this hip in that full range of motion. Okay? So I can do standing, so I can do the same thing. So I go from here, up, out, internally rotate, internally rotate, internally rotate, and back, internally rotate, up, and back down. I can do it lying on the back. It's not really, I say, there I'm working with gravity a lot more because I have to keep my leg up. I can do this from a supine position, so from here, but then I'm limited with some range because I can't get my foot behind, right? But I can still focus on the external rotation, I can focus on the abduction, and I can focus on some internal rotation. Okay, so in a side lying position, so keep the bottom leg straight out so that there's room for the front one to move. And then I want you to think bringing this ankle over the midline of the body. So externally rotating this hip. So think of sliding the foot on the floor. Yes? Yeah, so from here, push this one on the floor. So that's externally rotation of the hip. Now pull that leg up into as much flexion of the hip that you can. So just sliding it along the floor. Then open up the hip. So think of putting it towards your backside, open. Once you reach that point, an axis there, we internally rotate that hip as far as you can go. So pushing from here, pushing as far as you can, yeah? And then bring it back down, yeah? And now from there, we go back. We keep fighting for that internal rotation. Up into this point. Close the leg. And push it back down. Okay? Stuck? Right, so let me show you again from this side, right? So I'm creating tension. I'm on the side of my body. This foot, now externally rotated. I'm just sliding it up into maximum flexion. Once I reach that point, I'm going to abduct, so open up that hip. Without moving the hips, without moving the spine, when I get to that maximum point, I'm going to internally rotate that hip. And I'm going to keep pushing that internal rotation back as far as I can. Keep pushing, pushing, pushing even more until I get to the bottom position. Then I reverse. I keep that leg internally rotated until I get to my maximum position. Externally rotate it back in and bring it back down. The hips is the one that usually gets stuck the most, right? Because we sit too much. We move very linear. Okay, so just do 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. You'll probably find that one hip moves better than the other one, which is very common. So, yeah, I want you to try and think, I'm going to block you here. That shouldn't move. I'm only focusing on the hip. Yes. Okay, and now in reverse, yes. Okay, so this is something you need to think about avoiding, right? And even if that means, so that's where your body awareness is going to come in, right? You're going to want to feel forced to do this to get the maximum out of it that you can, but then we're defeating the purpose. I want this joint to move independently. So once you start feeling that your spine is starting to help, you stop and turn. Then we go through the rest. Over time, that range is going to become bigger so that can move a little further, okay? So I'm going to block you here just so that you're aware of where you need to turn, and then I'll tell you where to turn. So go up, stop, turn, and down. Now in reverse. Up, turn. Yes, that one's better. Okay, so now you feel that point where you know you can't go any further. Then we change direction. All right, good. That's the hip. And as I said, we can do a lot of different positions. I can do it in a quadruped position from here, right? Same thing, I'm pushing it up, out, internally rotate, internally rotate, internally rotate, back down, internally rotate, abduct, and down. A lot of different ways we can do this. And it's all about teaching my body that I'm comfortable moving my joints in different positions. So don't let your spine turn. Spine needs to stay still, okay? Internally rotate. This side is easier. And down. Okay. Good. All right, let's do one more. Then we'll do some hip rotations. Good. The other one is our knee, right? If I look at my femur and my tibia can rotate. A lot of people don't believe that this should happen because we only flex and extend our knee. Most knee injuries happen, and I've had one last year and I've got one now, happens because of lack of rotation, right? If you look at sports people that play a lot of football, it's the boot that gets stuck and then they turn. It's that lack of rotational strength. So the cars we want to do is being able to train this joint, if this leg is completely still, that one can rotate relatively. Now, how we need to do this is in a flexed position and in an extended position. So if I do a knee car, I would support myself just under the knee so that I can still flex and extend, right? If that's here, or if you're flexible and you can do it here, that's fine. But what I want you to do is We're going to start by externally rotating the ankle so that this bone moves. Right? Now I'm in a flexed position. I'm going to keep that ankle there and I'm going to push my leg into extension. Then I'm going to turn my ankle and bring it into flexion. Then turn the bone again, push it out into extension. Then I can reverse, keep it there, bring it into flexion, rotate, push it into extension. Okay, so just really making the joint aware that in the lengthening of that tissue it can turn, in the shortening of that tissue it can turn. Okay, so just do 2 on each side, just so that you get a feeling. Another way you can do this as well, but it doesn't focus so much on the flexion and extension, is just here. I've got my heel planted in the floor. I'm supporting my femur so that it doesn't move, and I'm just rotating through that joint. But now I'm only working in a flexed position. Unfortunately, if I extend and I try and do that, the hip comes into play. Now I'm moving my femur rather than my tibia. Right? Out or in, doesn't matter. As long as you become aware that that bone rotates about this joint. Eversion of the ankle or inversion of the ankle.
This working, the other option you
So,
put a
so from here, I'm just going to support. So I'll turn the ankle out so that the tibia turns. Then I'll push it into full extension of the knee. Then I turn the ankle in. And I bring it back into flexion. Out. Okay? Okay. And we do the same. We can do the same for the ankles. We can do the same for the wrists. We can do the same for the scapula, right? The scapula needs to glide comfortably around the rib cage. So that's where we start every session, is with CARs. We take our joints through full range of motion for maintenance, right? It's not just in class that we do it. As I said earlier, wherever you have a spot, if you're sitting, waiting, move your ankles, move your shoulder, move your neck. That's a very good maintenance thing. Right. Now we can get into the strength training part of it. The position I'm going to put you in is a 90-90, right? 90-90 looks like this, where I've got my front leg externally rotated and I have my back leg internally rotated. Now, the way I want you to think about this is this femur comes out of my torso at 90 degrees and it makes a 90-degree angle with the tibia. The back one comes out the side, perpendicular, 90 degrees. If I had to draw a line between that heel and that heel, it needs to be a straight line. Now, if you're lacking internal or external rotation, you can use the block to raise these knees up a little bit, right? Because technically now, this is either near or at your maximum range of external rotation. And this should be at your maximum range of internal. To such a point, if I told you now to lift that foot without moving the knee, it doesn't move, right? Which means at that rotation point, I've now reached my maximum. Can't go any further. And that's where we want to work, because now I want to build strength while that joint is there. The one that's even harder is the one at the back, the internally rotated one. If I keep that knee pressed down, I try and lift that foot, nothing happens. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about stretching. We always want to stretch the lengthening side of the tissue. So in this case, if I'm going to stretch, this is the short side of the tissue. That's the long side, the muscle. That's what we stretch. And then we create contractions in this side. So we're going to get into this position. We're going to stretch this leg. And we keep the stretch for about 2 minutes. And while we're stretching, I'm constantly breathing in 4 seconds, out 8 seconds. The reason is my body, my nervous system doesn't understand different kinds of stress. Stretching, rough day at work, lack of sleep, to the nervous system, stress is stress. It doesn't understand. So while I'm stretching, I'm putting stress on the body, but I'm also trying to tell the nervous system that it needs to give me access to that range. It needs to give me that flexibility, but it will only do so if it sees that it can trust me in that position, right? There's a big trust relationship between me and my CNS. Hence the breathing, because the breathing helps to calm my system from either a fight or flight mode into a more parasympathetic relaxed mode. So, what I also want you to think about in this stretch is, I don't want you to fold and see how far you can get. The purpose of this is I want to try and keep my chest and my belly button tall, and I want to push them forward so that I get a good stretch in the back and a good stretch underneath rather than folding. Okay? So once you're in that 90-90 position, I don't care for now where the back leg is. You can bring that a little closer if it's uncomfortable. We'll get to that leg in a moment. But here for now, I want you to just focus on holding that stretch. If you want to get an even better stretch, think of taking your tailbone and pushing your tailbone out to the back. So creating a posterior tilt of the pelvis so that I can get deeper into that stretch. And then you scan where it feels good for you. Hands are there, but light. The focus for me needs to be to get that control. But you can put a light touch in. So you should, in this position, and that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. If you scan and you find a position where you're comfortable, you should feel it around the back of the glute and underneath into the hamstring. Okay? So we're just going to hold that stretch there for 2 minutes. And then we'll do some rotation drills. Yeah, so the back one you can bend for now, as long as this one in the front. Bring this one a little bit closer this way. And then this here, yes. Well, no, so the goal is not to go as far as you can. The goal for me is to try. Yes, so what I'm doing now is I'm stretching the tissue that's responsible for hip external rotation, right? So, I mean, I can go and lie down here, but this is not the purpose. I want us to get into a point where I'm pushing my body forward and my pelvis back so that I can kind of find different places. Because one thing we have to remember, even though that big muscle, the glute, we call it one muscle. It's not one muscle. It's thousands of smaller fibers that if I stretch my hamstring this way, and if I stretch my hamstring this way, I'm stretching two completely different parts of that hamstring. It's not just one part. So we want to get to a point where I can find a position where I feel the best stretch around this hip. The worst pain. Yeah. The worst discomfort. And then I hold it. And while I'm there, I'm breathing, but I'm constantly scanning. I'm scanning and stretching as much of that tissue as I can in that 2-minute period. Right? Because what we're going to do now is focus on the tissues that are responsible for rotating my hip, right? Not the tissue that linear. Because usually when we squat, when we lunge, it's all very linear. We're using forwards, sideways, backwards, but we don't focus on the tissue inside of the joint that needs to rotate. Okay. I'm just going to talk you through what we'll do next. So stay in that stretch. At the end of the 2 minutes, we're going to do a Pales rails contraction. So Pales is progressive, long angle tissue. Rails is regressive, the tissue responsible for me doing this. At the end of the stretch, I'm going to ask you to push down on this knee. But what we're going to try and do is, I want you to try and rotate. So you're going to try and push this ankle through the floor, through the joint. So meaning, yes, so what I'm trying to do is, if that's my knee, I'm trying to rotate that knee. But it's not going to move because the floor is there. So we're going to create a contraction there. We'll hold it for 10 seconds. We'll ramp it up. I'll say 20%, 40%, 60%, maximum safest effort, and we'll keep pushing the floor away. for 10 seconds. Then immediately we'll reverse and we'll try and do that. So now I'm working this side of the rotation and this side of the rotation isometrically, okay? And we'll do the same thing. We'll ramp up the contraction and then we'll relax out of it. Okay. So before we go, we want to take a deep breath in. We want to create tension in the body. However you support yourself, press hard against the floor. And I want you to start ramping up that contraction. Try and push this ankle into the floor. Keep pushing it as hard as you can. Press down, press down. I'm activating that internal rotational tissue. Press, press, press. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Without relaxing, now try and reverse. Try and lift, rotate this knee up. It's not supposed to move because I'm at my end range. Yeah? But it's using the tissue there that is supposed to do that. That gets activated. So I'm going to keep pushing that contraction. Hold. You might get a cramp there. Push. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Okay. That's the contraction we're trying to get to because internal and external hip rotation is very important. So in this position, because I'm at my end range, I'm telling my hip, I want you to rotate there. I want you to rotate there. Okay. No, not yet other side. Not yet other side. Okay. That is only one rep. What we would typically do is, with me in that position now, I'll rest maybe 30 seconds and I'll go through another rep. 15 seconds, 15 seconds. Relax. Every time I do that, I'm changing the tissue inside of the joint, which will allow me to now get into further external rotation. Okay, so let's leave that one there for now. The back leg 90 degrees. I want to focus on some external rotation. So we're going to do some lift-offs. I'm going to keep that ankle planted into the floor. Now, if you want to be a bit more comfortable, if you lack that internal rotation, you can lean out to this side a little bit. The goal, of course, is ultimately to get as upright as possible because now I've got good internal rotation. What I want to try and do is we're going to keep that ankle on the floor and I'm going to lift this knee. So I'm rotating externally as far as I can, keeping my foot in place, externally rotating, and then relaxing. So a lift off is we're just lifting off to the maximum position we can and bringing it back down slowly and controlled. Okay, we'll just do 5 lift offs. So from here, create tension in the body, rotate externally, maximum. So core, we want to create tension so that it doesn't move. The only thing I want to move is my hip, because if I start to do this, then I'm not doing same as with my shoulder, then I'm not using my hip anymore. So I want to, here, it's only the hip that moves as far as it can and back down. Okay, again, you should feel this inside tissue tension up. So just 5, slow and controlled. On every rep that we do with this, I want you to very intentionally think about what it is I'm trying to do. Because I'm trying to create that mind-body connection of, I need to train my system to be aware of that joint and how it moves. Okay? That one hurts?
No.
Okay. The other thing, I'll switch us over to the other side so we can balance it. So we won't do this one. What I would typically then further do here is, with this leg now still in internal rotation, we'll do the same thing. I'll create a contraction, me trying to bring that leg this way. So I'm trying to rotate this ankle and pressing it through the floor. And the reverse is me trying to lift that ankle off the floor. But because I'm in that maximum end range, it's not going to move. But I'm still activating the tissues responsible for doing it. Okay. So keeping the knee as the rotation point, this is my foot. The first contraction is trying to press the floor away. So creating external rotation, the ankle, yeah. And then the opposite is creating even further internal rotation by trying to lift this foot off the floor. So me trying to do that. Knee stays where it is. We focus on the ankle because we're focusing on rotation.
If you're pressing this down, you're able to. Is that what you mean?
No. So I'm not pressing here. That is an axis of rotation. I'm trying to just do that. And if I'm in my maximum range here, it will not move. It's not supposed to move. Okay. We won't do that one now. Otherwise, we have to balance it the other side as well. But that's typically the 3 things I would do in this position. There's a lot of other things I can do, but I do external rotation, internal rotation. Now we're going to turn around, but I want us to do so actively, right? I don't just want to. So I want to think of from this position, I want to now externally rotate that leg up to a point. Now I can start using my torso up to a point where it does not go anymore unless this leg comes along. So then I'll start externally rotating, external, internal, pressing this one down, constantly creating rotational tension around the joint. That's to swap legs. So keeping tension. And now when I'm in the other side, I'm back into a 90-90 with this leg in internal and that leg external. Yeah? Okay. We'll do the same thing here just so that we balance out the hips. Otherwise, the one hip's going to pain more than the other one. We need to treat them fairly. Okay, we'll do the same thing here. Now that the opposite leg is in the front, we're going to find that position where we're going to stretch in for 2 minutes. Okay, so just find that end range of yours. Scan for a good position. So think chest and belly button forward. So sit up, okay? Rather than folding, press to my hand. So not folding, pressing your upper torso forward and pressing your pelvis back. Yeah. So also here, try not to turn the body too much. We want to try and get to keeping the torso perpendicular to the chest, to the leg. So even if you have to support with your hands to do it, then I'm trying to get into that position because then I'm going to get a better stretch on the glute medius. Yeah. Okay, hold that position. We're going to go into the same contraction we did on the other leg, right? So from here, we're going to keep the knee in position. I want you to think rotating that foot and pressing it down, not the knee. I'm not pressing. That's another exercise, right? That's a linear exercise where later on I can now say, I want you to feel as if there are 2 scales underneath these joints, and you're going to press both the knee and the ankle down together. But that activates different tissue to me keeping the knee still and rotating the ankle. Okay, so we're going to keep the knee in position. I'm going to say take a deep breath in, back the air down, creating tension in your body. And now I'm going to ramp up that contraction. So I'm going to try and push that ankle into the floor using the underside of the tissue. So ramping it up, 20%, 40%, 60, 80, maximum safest effort. Press, 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 and keep holding it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now reverse. Try and lift that ankle off the floor, activating the tissue on the inside. It shouldn't come off the floor. So keep lifting. Hold that tension. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
relax. Okay. Over time, what this will allow you to do is you will be able to lift that leg up. But because you're at that end range now, we're training the muscles there to get stronger so that I can do this, because then I can get even more into, so I can keep expanding that range. Right now, this is my end. It doesn't move. For me to get that to move, I need to be here so that I can get that to move. Over time, I want to be able to get closer and closer, get that to move, so that ultimately I can move it quite far. And there's a lot of different rotation. I can use blocks. I can do rotation in a butterfly position, in a squat position, in a bear sit position. There's a lot of stuff we can do, but its importance is in focusing on the internal and the external rotation of the hip, the flexion, and the extension. Okay, let's do one more. We've got 5 more minutes. While we're in that 90-90, actually, let's turn out into a butterfly position. We'll work on some hip flexion. So what we're going to do here is a hover. We're going to use the hip flexors, so the shortening tissue, to lift up the leg, move it, and set it down in a position. So now I'm working on all of these small tissues. I'll show you now. Again, if I sit very upright, this is a very small angle. So it's very hard for me to get that over. If I want to make it easier, I lean back a little bit. But what I don't want is you being able to do that. That defeats the point. The goal is always to find a position where I'm challenging that tissue just enough so that I can fight to clear the obstacle. If it's too easy, I'm just moving my joint. I'm not challenging the tissue on the inside. Okay, so what we're going to do is, from this position, we'll put the block just outside of the ankle. And my goal now is to find a position where I can lift and just enough to clear the block, lift it up, activating. This is tension under this tissue. Rotate it out and set it down softly outside of the block. And from there, same thing. I want to keep tension. So from here, lift, bring it in, set it down softly. And now I can do this for repetitions. Let's do the other side. I can do 3 repetitions there, 5 repetitions, 10 repetitions. Same thing. So we create tension in the body. Take a deep breath in, lift, hover over, set it down softly. Tension, lift, hover over, set it down softly. Good.
Honestly, not using your hands to.
So you can initially, right? That's why I said initially, if you don't have the strength in those joints, it's going to be very hard for you to do it from here. But you need to be strict with yourself to a point where if I lean back, that it's not too far where that becomes too easy. Yeah? This is strength training. Think about if you're in the gym and you're trying to make your back squat heavier. You're going to have to progressively overload the tissue to do that. And if I'm constantly just going to make it easy, it's not going to strength train those tissues. Okay, let's go for one more on the right and one more on the left. So from here, I go create tension in the body. I can squeeze my hands to create further tension. Take a deep breath in, lift, slow and controlled, clear the block. Set it down, reverse, bring it back. Okay, and then we do one more on the other side. Same thing. Create tension, deep breath in, up, over, set it down softly, tension up, over,
Set it down softly. Good. You should by now, because I'm feeling it, feel that you've worked there on the inside of your thighs. That's all the little connective tissue and muscles responsible for the rotation that we don't train when we do lunges, when we do squats, when we do that kind of stuff. Because we focus on the big red muscles and not the white tissues that are responsible for controlling the joints. Okay, we've just done 5 exercises on the hips. On the hips, I could probably do 1,000 more in different positions. Where, let's take hip flexion, right? From here, I can now do the same. I can have full flexion of this hip, and I do the same thing. I create tension, I lift that leg up to create the hip flexor, over, and set it down. Yeah. So for you now, if that's too easy, try and lean forward, closing that angle of that tissue a bit more. Yes. See? So for you as well. So if that's too easy to move over, close this angle of the tissue to a point where it's, and then you gauge how much you need to go over. Yeah? It's possible to go over, yes. So initially, if it's not, right, even though you're just trying to move that over, it's still creating tension in that same tissue. So in the beginning, if it's just you lifting it and dropping it, so that's a lift off, lifting it and dropping it. Then over time, you add the control of lifting, hovering, setting down. Because what I'm doing now is I'm training the tissue at different degrees of range. Okay, let's just do the other one while we're here to keep things balanced. Okay, so I'm creating knee flexion, up, over, and down. Tension. Good.
Yeah. Break it wrong.
Good. Means you've got strong hip flexors. And there's always a way for you to challenge yourself to make it harder, right? As I said, the larger this angle, the easier it is. The smaller that angle, the harder that becomes. So you need to find.
Yeah, I'm struggling more with this one. This one was the whole shit.
And that's the thing, right? In every angle that let's say today I'm training here. If tomorrow I'm training there, I'm training 2 different parts of the same tissue. But it's you being able to make the exercise as hard as you need to make it for you to get the stimulus that you need, right? Because when we do mobility, you see in the gym very often, right? Having a sip of water, chatting with friends, moving stuff, but not really training. This is why Kinstretch it is a very intentional training. I keep emphasizing, I want you to focus. I want you to think of clearing a millimeter. I want you to think, I want you to breathe, I want you to brace, because that's where we make change, right? If you back squat, you're not going to go into a 200 kilogram back squat and not think about the back squat. You need to be focused, and that's the same thing we want to do. That's easy. Yeah? Okay, I do have to warn you, even just from this little stuff that we did now, your hips will probably pain here tomorrow because we just did a form of strength training. It's normal. It's not your joints that's breaking now. It's just we're waking up tissues in there. Yes, there. We're waking up tissues in there that probably haven't worked in a long time or at all. Okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
Good?
Eye-opening.
Now, there's an incredible amount of stuff we can do. I mean, we just worked in 1-2 base positions now. There's 14 or 15 different base positions that I can do. Like I said, if I can get my hips into a position, I can train there. I can do a half 90. I can do a seated Cossack. I can do a figure 4 stretch. I can do a seated squat. There's a lot of different, and while I'm there, if I can rotate my shoulders, I rotate my shoulders there. Okay.
sitting,
Yes.
having even upper body.
Because
Mm.
because now the spine becomes the restriction, right? Because if I now need to rotate my shoulder, what's naturally going to happen is a lot of extension of the spine. So when we go through spinal segmentation drills, where I try and move my spine vertebrae by vertebrae, one by one, that's when we start to realize how the spine needs to move and we're creating space in between the vertebrae.
So how often is exercise?
So, I mean, you can do this every day if you don't train the same tissue every day, because it would be like back squatting every day for 5 days. You're not going to get, eventually the tissue is going to be so tired, it's not going to work. So what I would typically do is I would alternate days. I would do a lower body day where I can do knees and ankles today. Then I do shoulders and neck tomorrow. Then I do hips and spine the following day. Then I do elbows and wrists the next day. So it is something, like I said earlier, the CARs, the rotation of the joints, that you should do every day for 10 minutes because it's low tension. All I'm doing is I'm taking my joint through its full range of motion. Okay. Good. We'll call it there. Yeah, I mean, as long as you need to, right? As long as you feel it's necessary for you to get, it's your joints at the end of the day. When you're 70, you're going to have to use them. And if they're not there to use, whether that was 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, that's an investment for you.
Because I struggle with